Seahawks. Thanks for joining us once again for another Student Live. As always, if you have any questions or comments, you can feel free to put them right down below. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and in case you didn't know, in just the United States, it's estimated that 1 in every 8 women will actually develop breast cancer in her lifetime. So we want today's segment to focus on driving that awareness, encouraging regular screening, and educating you about how you can help support women who actually have been diagnosed. And so to do all that today, I have a very special guest with me, a member of the Broward College family, who is here to share her story with us.
Hi, I'm Natalie Justice, and I'm the manager of Tiger Tail Lake Recreational Center of Broward College.
We are so excited to have you on with us today, Natalie. So thank you so much for being here. Before we jump into today's topic, just want to check in. It's been a while since I've been able to see you face to face. So how are you doing? How's the fam?
Everybody's good. Kids are in school online, so that, they seem to be enjoying it. Everybody's looking forward to getting back to some normalcy. So luckily, Tiger Tail just opened a couple weeks ago. So now we are open on a limited basis from Thursday to Sunday. So that's been helpful to kind of get back into the routine of things.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm excited because we're counting down until we're bringing our teams back out there for some developmental exercises with our expert staff out in Tiger Tail. So we're counting down. So for today's topic, we're talking about breast cancer awareness. And of course, one of the reasons that we wanted to bring you on and share your stories because you've actually survived your diagnosis. And so we're excited to kind of hear about what your journey looked like. And to kick us off, could you kind of share a little bit about when you were first diagnosed and at what stage?
Sure, absolutely. So it was June of 2015 that I first noticed that I had a lump on my left breast, and which at the time I didn't really think anything of it because there's no family history of breast cancer. So I just really kind of assumed that it was a benign cyst or something of that nature. But I definitely wanted to get it checked out because it was a pretty big lump that I found. So that was the end of June. I went and had a mammogram done. I went which led to a biopsy. And then July 1st of 2015 is when I got the call saying that it did come back positive for cancer.
When you received your mammogram, was that something that you were shocked because you'd been routinely doing them?
So yeah, so one of the takeaways is don't assume that you're not a candidate for it. Because I didn't have a family history, I was not good at getting my mammograms done on a regular basis. Because again, I thought, I don't really there's not a significant chance of me getting it because of no family history. So, that was one of the takeaways. And that's one of the things I try to share with people is even if you don't have a history of it, or you don't think that you're a possible candidate for it, please make sure you stay up with your mammograms.
So after July 1st, when you received that phone call, what did the next few weeks look like for you?
Oh my gosh, it was such a whirlwind because, first, there's the shock of being diagnosed, right? And I remember getting the call from a doctor that wasn't my normal doctor. It was just the one that was doing the screening. And I remember asking him, like, what do I do next? Like, I have no idea what to do or where to go from here. And he instructed me to reach out to my gynecologist, which I did the next day because it was after hours at that point. And from there, my gynecologist gave me the name of a surgeon who I went to see that day. And that surgeon gave me the name of an oncologist, actually several oncologists. So like I said, it was a whirlwind. From that point on, probably 2, 3, 4 times a week, I had a doctor's appointment. I had tests. I had, PET scans, CAT scans, every test you can imagine to figure out exactly what type of breast cancer I had.
And then the end results at the point where you received them, what did the diagnosis tell you?
So once they did all the tests, I was diagnosed of having triple negative breast cancer, which means I tested negative for estrogen, progesterone, and the HER2. And what's important about that is that means the type of cancer I had didn't respond to a certain type of treatment, right? The other thing about the type of cancer I had was it's very aggressive in nature, but if you catch it early enough, the prognosis is good. So luckily, when I was diagnosed, it was stage 2. It was localized in just my left breast. It hadn't gone into my lymph nodes or spread anywhere else. So that was good that we caught it early enough. July 23rd of 2015 is when I started my chemo treatment.
So can you tell us a little bit about then what your treatment process looked like once you had identified the type of cancer and the stage that it was at?
Sure. Yeah. So the reason my doctors decided to start with chemo and then do surgery after the fact was to make sure that I responded to the chemo. By they could actually see the tumor shrinking in size after the rounds of chemo. So my regimen was I had 6 rounds of chemo every 3 weeks. And so my first one was July 23rd. And then my last one was in November of 2015.
Okay. So just roughly less than 6 months worth of the initial chemo treatment.
Right.
And then after that point?
So after the chemo, I had a bilateral mastectomy in early December of 2015. And after that, I was declared cancer-free. They had, between the chemo, which had pretty much shrunk the tumor down to nothing. And then I elected for the bilateral mastectomy instead of a lumpectomy because I was only 43 when I was diagnosed. And I didn't want to have to worry about it coming back. The chances of it coming back to the other breast that wasn't, or if I just had a single mastectomy. So that's why I elected to have the bilateral mastectomy, again, just for peace of mind.
You mentioned at the point where you got that first phone call, like the shock that kind of settles in initially, but after that point, when you start to process the diagnosis, any other feelings that you kind of had to go through or sort through as part of the acceptance of like I said, the cancer being present?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides the shock, fear. Don't ever make the mistake of Googling it until you have all the answers in front of you, because that is a wormhole you don't want to go down. But probably one of the hardest things when I got that diagnosis was sharing it with my wife, Jennifer, and my mother. Part of me thinks it's sometimes harder for the caregivers, or at least in my experience, because the caregivers can only do so much, and I know that there's probably that feeling of helplessness that they went through. And that was hard for me because it was, I didn't want them to, it was just really hard to share that information with the people that were closest to me. So yeah, that was difficult.
Yeah, I think that, as I've shared with you before in conversation, like we had a family member who also was diagnosed with a very different form of cancer, but I agree with you from the family piece or the loved ones piece, like there is something, it's a very different experience, of course, than the person who's diagnosed and going through treatment, but there is a part of you that feels like you're in it. And that helplessness feeling is ever present, and it's very hard to get rid of it because you're basically watching this person go through extreme circumstances, not knowing like what does your role look like. But I know from having experienced this, like I said, with my grandmother, that the thing that was most important to her was constantly to be surrounded by family. So it sounds like you had a nice support network. What did that look like, or how did that kind of alter your experience?
I had an amazing support network. I mean, obviously my family, which includes my wife, and I had 3 young boys at that time who were fantastic. But I also had a huge support from friends. And also Broward College was amazing. From my coworkers to my boss, along the line, just having that support while going through treatment was phenomenal, because I continued to work through the chemo, and I had bad days and I had good days, and knowing that my my team was there was super helpful to get through those really long, hard days.
Yeah, I'm always surprised also too, specifically when we went through it with my grandmother, like people who you don't expect that do the outreach and extend support and love in a variety of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was also one of the things that amazed me was because I did share on Facebook my story, and because I wanted people to realize that even though you might not have a history of it, please go out and get the test, get the mammograms, make sure you're doing the self-examination. But what came from that was just an outpouring of messages and well-being from people I hadn't talked to in 20 years, and cards. Like, I can't, who sends cards anymore, right? I got so many cards in the mail, just people just letting them know I was in their thoughts. And it was amazing to realize how many people, are in your corner.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. And I'm sure it drastically, for a lot of people, changes the trajectory of going through the treatment process. And you specifically, you had kind of multiple types of treatment because you went through chemo and then you had surgery, and that's a very intense process. So I'm curious to know what kind of obstacles you had to face and overcome there with just going through different like seasons of treatment.
Yeah. So the chemo is no joke. Like it really, the side effects of the chemo are hard to get through. So before my chemo treatment, which I did on a Wednesday, every third Wednesday, I would take steroids, oral steroids, and anti-nausea medicine to prepare my body for the chemo. And then once I got to the to get the chemo, which was an all-day process, they would again give me some steroids to help counteract the side effects of the chemo. So I would call that first weekend after my chemo my bad weekend, because that's when the steroids would wear off and the chemo was its strongest, right? So that was that was hard because it was just a lot of fatigue, kind of like feeling like you have the flu really bad, like achy and just really tired. But as the days went by to my next chemo, it was better and better. So that last weekend would be what I would call my good weekend. So if I wanted to plan something, I would try to work around that schedule.
Yeah, that makes sense. And hopefully it helped, right? It gives you some level of structure despite the chaos that you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I think that's important from your story that you pointed out was the regular screening piece. And like, there's so much to be said about women, even young women, who are very proactive about their health in general. And health can extend to a number of things, like, heart disease is still the #1 killer of women. Like, there's still so many things out there we have to be paying attention to constantly, what our bodies are telling us. So we have obviously strong women viewership at BC in general, just because we have more females than we do males that are enrolled at the college. And I'm sure we have a lot of women watching today. So some advice that you would give based on your circumstances, just the major takeaways from the experience.
Again, regular screening. Don't just assume that you're not a candidate for it. I'm living proof that it can happen to anyone. So I tell you, no one in my family had it. Like, I'm talking, aunts, aunts, second cousins, down the line. No one in my family had ever had breast cancer. So that regular screening is super important. Don't procrastinate. Like, I found the lump and I immediately went and got it checked out. And thank goodness I did, because again, in hindsight, the type of cancer I had, which is very aggressive, if I had put it off, it could have very easily turned into a stage 3 or stage 4 type of cancer. So don't put it off. Just, no one likes to go to the doctors, but just go do it. And finally, be your own best advocate. If you know your body better than anybody, so if you need to go out and get a second opinion or really get the answers you need, like I said, go out and get those. One of the things that happened to me was when I went originally and had the biopsy, it was written in my report to wait 6 months and come back and check again. And I didn't even notice that till after the fact, but I was very grateful that someone didn't follow that advice and went ahead and moved on with the biopsy. Because again, if I had waited 6 months, who knows what stage my cancer would have been in at that point. So, if you see that, or you're your own best advocate. So just make sure that you're getting the answers that you need.
I have a question for you also about mindset, because again, having gone through this experience with a very close family member, there was something to be said about the approach that you yourself take toward your diagnosis and treatment. And I think ultimately it really impacts your outcome, or regardless of what potentially can happen, but it drastically changes the process of going through treatment. So I'm curious to know from your perspective, like where mindset played a role.
Yeah, so once I got past the shock of the diagnosis, and once, I shared with my family, and kind of like, all right, this is happening. I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's attack this. Let's get this. Let's do what we need to do to beat this. And, I really tried to stay optimistic and positive. Sure, there was bad days, but I really tried to keep those thoughts out and really just kind of focus on moving forward and staying positive. When I knew I was going to lose my hair, and actually my surgeon had told me it's recommended to go ahead and shave your head yourself so that you're in control of that process and you're not responding to the chemo making your hair fall out. So I decided to have a little bit of fun with it, and my friend came over and we gave myself a mohawk and dyed my hair hot pink. And so I rocked that for a few weeks. And actually my first chemo treatment, I had that too. And so then after I had my chemo, I went ahead and shaved my head. So again, just, I really tried to focus on the positive of what I was dealing with.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, I think it extends outside of the boundaries too of cancer. I think just in terms of health, that the positivity piece, it impacts you greatly more so than you realize. And I think that like research has shown that a positive outlook on any circumstances, what we're going through right now regarding COVID and, our lives being uprooted, like it drastically changes your approach.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. One of the things so my good weekend happened to fall on Halloween that year. So that was awesome. And since I was bald, I decided to have some fun with it. And I decided there to be Pitbull or Dr. Evil. So I chose to be Dr. Evil, and just, like I said, kind of embraced my baldness at that point, and just trying to stay positive and have fun with it as best as I could, not just for me, but again, like I had 3 young, I had, at that time they were, how old were my boys then? Like 8, 10, 6, 8, and 10, I believe. So, they were at that age where, trick-or-treating was a big deal, and probably still is today. But, just to stay engaged with my family. And I didn't want, especially my young boys, to look at me as being sick. So I really tried to maintain that, again, positive outlook and just embrace it and have fun with it. And, let's go about life as normal as we can.
Well, I can say personally, obviously, I know we've gotten to work together very closely over my time at BC. You've been there longer than I have now, but I'm glad that that's the approach that you took. And I'm very, very happy that here we are coming up on what will be your 5-year cancer-free anniversary, right?
Yes, this December, yay. So the type of cancer I have or had, the triple negative. So as I said, it was a very aggressive cancer, but if you caught it early enough, prognosis is good. And with that type of cancer, the first 3 years, if it doesn't come back, the odds of it coming back drop dramatically. But after 5 years, which will be this December for me, the chance of it coming back is very, very low. So this is a big milestone for me coming up this December, and we're celebrating.
We are. We'll be celebrating right alongside of you. And by that, I mean at least 6 feet apart, if not. Natalie, I cannot thank you enough on behalf of Student Life for doing this, for sharing your story. As I mentioned, obviously a few times now, and as you know, personally, my family was impacted greatly by a family member having cancer. And so it is an incredible personal experience to not only go through it, but be willing to share it out loud. So for both the patient and for the loved ones. So I not only thank you, please thank Jennifer and your boys on behalf of our team for doing this with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. And, as I mentioned to you, it's, if I have the opportunity to share my story, if I have the opportunity to help somebody, for those of you watching, if you're going through something and you want to reach out to me, please do. So again, and the biggest takeaway is just catch it early, do the test and don't procrastinate.
Yep, absolutely. So Seahawks, we hope that you have some amazing takeaways from today's program. Thank you so much for joining us as always, and please tune in next week as we celebrate National Coming Out Awareness Week. We will see you all soon. Bye.